Today I want to talk about test prep. So I don't do test prep personally, but in our world of college consulting, test prep often goes pretty hand in hand with the work we're doing with our students. However, I get asked a lot of times a couple of things. One is, do we even need to hire somebody to do test prep for us, with our child? And the answer to that, as is often the answer to everything in this process, is it depends. It really depends on the student, what type of learner they are, and how motivated and individually driven they can be. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of resources out there that allow a student to be self-guided in the process of test prep. And so those are sometimes really good and affordable options for families who don't want to invest the kind of money that is often required for test prep services. Again, you get out of it what you put into it. That's the best way to describe it. So even with working with a test prep provider, whether that's in a classroom setting or in a one-on-one type tutoring situation, students are still going to have to put into the process in order to get out of the process. So they have to do homework, they have to practice. Those are all parts of test prepping that are required in order to see any measurable changes. But again, if a student is motivated and can hold themselves accountable, they can absolutely do it themselves, either using books, online resources like old copies of actual tests that they can take as practice online. Khan Academy is an online resource that is free for the SAT specifically. So the other thing to think about, in addition to just, are they self-motivated enough? Again, we want motivation no matter who or what or how they're doing it. But in terms of, if you are going to hire someone to work with your child, what is the best option for them? In other words, are they going to respond better to somebody who sits down with them one-on-one? And does that one-on-one need to be face-to-face, or are they okay doing it virtually? Is it better for them to have a classroom setting where they can interact with other people and are gaining knowledge just from the conversations that happen in that environment? I think really thinking about your child specifically is important in determining where and how to invest in the resources when it comes to test prep. For example, my own son did it virtually, but the original plan was that the meetings would be nearly 2 hours long. And I knew from the beginning that that was not going to be really conducive for him to get any benefit. After a certain amount of time, he is going to time out and not really be engaged in what is happening. So I went into it ahead of the game and just made that modification and asked the tutoring company if they would be willing to work with us, but on a more modified schedule that suited his needs better. And that is what we did, and that worked out fine. Again, other people respond much better to someone sitting down with them in person, and some people are going to be fine in a classroom and not distracted and all of those things. So figuring out what is best for your child is what really matters in this process. Then the other sort of fundamental part of the question is often, well, does this really make a difference? Honestly, yes, it can. These are tests that can absolutely be trained for. That is one of the reasons that there is controversy about whether or not the testing should be part of our enrollment process or not, because there are people who are going to get test prep and might see their scores increase by 200, 300 points, and others who are maybe not going to have access to that resource and might not have the opportunity to see that kind of increase. So again, it is completely realistic that yes, tutoring and work can make an improvement, but do you have to do it? Absolutely not. The bottom line is you never have to do it. It is just a matter of where it falls in the order of priority in your family, in terms of where to spend the money and the time and the effort and the energy, and what value it will add to the overall process. In terms of that, there are more and more schools that are continuing to stay test optional, but there are also others that are coming back online requiring testing. So depending on where you are in the process, you may not have an answer yet in terms of what your child is going to need in terms of standardized tests. So our general rule of thumb has been to advise students to go ahead and be proceeding as if they are going to need test scores somewhere along the way in the college process. So most students that we are working with are in fact doing some type of testing throughout the course of mostly their junior year. So again, it's always individualized. That's where we come in to try to help make decisions and determine the best path forward for students and their families when they're making these kinds of decisions. If you have any questions specifically about test prep, need recommendations for who to use, those kinds of things, please be in touch and we will get you started in the right direction.